Pain is both our greatest enemy and our greatest teacher. At first, that sounds impossible. How could the very thing we spend our lives avoiding hold the secret to freedom? We are trained to escape pain at all costs, numb it with distractions, bury it under busyness, or mask it with forced smiles. And yet, the paradox remains. What we resist most fiercely is often the very thing that carries the seed of transformation. Picture a forest after a wildfire. The flames are merciless, reducing proud trees to ash. For weeks, the land looks dead, a graveyard of what once was. But then, almost invisibly, green shoots break through the blackened earth. Flowers bloom brighter, nourished by the ashes. Without the fire, the soil would never have been renewed. The devastation becomes the womb of renewal. Human suffering is not so different. In our darkest hours, heartbreak, failure, loss, we believe we are being destroyed. Yet often it is in these very moments that life prepares us for growth we could never have imagined. Pain strips away illusions, ego, and false certainty, leaving us raw, but also real. Like the fire that burns a forest only to give birth to new life, suffering burns away what is shallow so something deeper can emerge. But here's the paradox. The more we run from suffering, the more it grows. The pain we try to avoid turns into chains that bind us tighter. The hurt we suppress does not vanish. It festers in silence, shaping our choices and our fears. Yet when we turn toward pain, when we allow ourselves to feel it fully, suddenly it changes shape. It is no longer a monster chasing us, but a messenger handing us the truth we've been unwilling to face. So the central question is this: what happens when we stop fleeing from pain and instead listen to it? Is it possible that pain, far from being life's cruel punishment, is actually the doorway into wisdom, compassion, and freedom? There was once a young man named Daniel who worked tirelessly at his job. He was ambitious, disciplined, and determined to build a life free from hardship. Every setback, every discomfort, he treated as an enemy to be crushed. When his back ached from long nights, he drowned it in coffee. When anxiety whispered in his chest, he smothered it with more work. He told himself, "If I just push hard enough, I can outrun pain." But life has a way of revealing the truth no one wants to hear. One day, Daniel's body collapsed. What he thought was fatigue turned out to be a serious illness. He was forced into bed for weeks, unable to move, unable to work, stripped of the identity he had clung to so fiercely. At first, he felt betrayed. "Why now? Why me?" he asked, as if pain were an intruder stealing his dreams. Yet something unexpected happened. With nothing left to distract himself, Daniel had no choice but to sit with his pain. He began to notice things he had ignored for years. The quiet hum of the wind outside his window, the gentle presence of his mother who sat silently by his bed, the way his own breath rose and fell without his effort. For the first time, he wasn't trying to control life. He was simply receiving it, moment by fragile moment. And in that stillness, Daniel discovered something shocking. The pain wasn't just punishment. It was pointing him to what really mattered. The illness had stripped him of his illusions of control, but it had also revealed the tenderness of life that he had never stopped long enough to feel. He saw that his endless striving had not protected him from suffering. It had only blinded him to the truth within it. Many of us live like Daniel. We run from our discomforts, treating them as enemies rather than guides. But when the chase finally fails, and it always does, we are invited into a deeper lesson, that pain, though unwanted, often holds a message we desperately need. Daniel's story is not unique. It is, in many ways, the blueprint of human life. We spend our days trying to engineer a path around pain, but sooner or later, life places it right before us. The question is not whether we will suffer, but what we will do with it. Will we see it as meaningless cruelty, or as a hidden teacher? Think of the river. When a fallen tree blocks its course, the river does not curse or retreat. It does not demand that the obstacle vanish. Instead, it flows around, over, or even through the blockage, slowly wearing it down. What seems at first like an interruption becomes part of the river's journey. In time, the river is not diminished by the obstruction, but shaped into something new, something wiser in its curves and bends. Our suffering works the same way. Grief, failure, heartbreak. These are the fallen trees in the river of our lives. They can harden us if we resist them, or they can carve us into deeper, softer beings if we allow them to shape us. Pain is not the end of the flow. It is part of the flow. Alan Watts once observed that, "To suffer without trying to escape is the real key, because then you discover what suffering has to teach." When we stop running, we begin to notice the subtle gifts pain brings: resilience, humility, compassion. Just as burned forests give rise to richer soil, the heart broken by loss is often the heart that learns to love more deeply, more freely. This doesn't mean we should romanticize suffering or seek it out. Life will provide enough of it without our help, but it does mean that when it arrives, we have a choice: to fight it blindly and make it heavier, or to open ourselves and let it transform us. The truth hidden in pain is not that suffering is good, but that it is fertile. It prepares the ground of the soul for new growth, and often the very things we think are breaking us are actually breaking us open. There are always two paths before us when suffering comes knocking. Path one is the path we are taught by society. It is the path of resistance, of endless self-defense. We numb our pain with distractions, scrolling through screens, shopping for things we don't need, drowning silence with noise. We tell ourselves, if I keep moving fast enough, I won't have to feel it. But this path is a trap. Like building a fortress with walls so high that no light can enter. The attempt to protect ourselves from suffering also isolates us from joy. We become anxious, exhausted, and strangely empty. Pain does not vanish here. It multiplies in the shadows. Path two is quieter, more radical. It is the path of turning toward pain, of listening instead of running. On this path, suffering is not an enemy to destroy, but a companion to learn from. Instead of fortresses, we build bridges. Instead of hiding behind walls, we let life move through us, like music in a symphony, sometimes soft, sometimes dissonant, but always part of the whole. This path doesn't remove pain, but it transforms it. It turns wounds into wisdom, scars into reminders of resilience, and endings into beginnings. Consider the difference between a desert and a rainforest. A desert is barren because it refuses water, drying and cracking under the sun. It resists, and so it withers. The rainforest, however, accepts every storm, every downpour. It lets the rain soak its soil, and because of that, it flourishes with unthinkable diversity and life. Our hearts are much the same, resist the storms of pain, and we become dry and brittle. Let the rain fall, and we become fertile with compassion, creativity, and depth. So the contrast is clear. Resist pain, isolation, anxiety, emptiness. Embrace pain, connection, growth, freedom, or as a one-liner to carry with you. To resist pain is to double it. To face it is to free it. If suffering teaches us anything, it is that life cannot be fully controlled or explained. Pain arrives without warning, like an uninvited guest, and often lingers longer than we would allow. Our instinct is to demand answers. Why me? Why now? What does this mean? But sometimes, the deepest relief comes not from finding an answer, but from surrendering to the mystery of not knowing. This is the paradox. Uncertainty, which we fear, is also liberation. To say, "I don't know," is not weakness. It is freedom from the prison of needing to explain everything. The sun does not shine in order to justify itself. The eye cannot see itself directly. A knife cannot cut itself. And so too, life's deepest truths cannot be grasped by the mind that tries to hold them too tightly. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean at night. You cannot see where the waves end. You cannot predict their rhythm. All you can do is listen, feel, and allow the vastness to wash over you. That is what it means to live with suffering, not as a riddle to solve, but as a mystery to inhabit. Alan Watts often reminded us that the mystery of life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Pain, in this sense, is not simply an obstacle, but a doorway. It pulls us out of the smallness of certainty and into the vastness of wonder. It reminds us that we are not the masters of life's script, but participants in its unfolding play. And maybe that is the hidden invitation of suffering, not to shrink into fear, but to expand into curiosity. Instead of asking, "How do I escape this?" we might ask, "What is this showing me? What becomes possible when I don't know?" In the end, the mystery is not meant to terrify us. It is meant to set us free. We began with a paradox, that pain, the very thing we flee from, may carry within it the truth we most need. Now, having walked through the forest fire, the river's flow, and the mystery of not knowing, perhaps that paradox no longer feels so strange. Perhaps you can see that suffering is not life's punishment, but life's invitation. Every crack in your heart, every tear you have shed, is not evidence of weakness, but of depth. Just as autumn leaves must fall for spring to return, so too must we let ourselves be undone if we are to be remade. Pain is the great dissolver of illusions, of false control, of shallow attachments. And in its dissolving, it clears the ground for something truer to grow. This is why Alan Watts would often remind us that impermanence is not our enemy, but our companion. To resist change is to resist life itself, but to accept it, even to dance with it, is to discover a freedom deeper than happiness, a freedom that comes from trust. So when suffering visits, as it inevitably will, remember this. It is not here to destroy you. It is here to shape you, to soften you, to remind you that you are alive in a world that is always becoming, never finished. The truth hidden in pain is that it is not the end of the story, but the opening of a new chapter. Let suffering, then, not be a chain, but a key. Let it unlock the doors of your heart so that love and wisdom may flow more freely. Do not ask only to be spared from pain. Ask to be awakened by it. For what is truly yours, what is meant for your soul, will never be lost. And so, as you step back into the currents of your own life, carry this isiasoas with you. Pain is not the shadow of life. It is the light breaking through.